Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. On today's episode, I want to welcome Keyen Lage. Keyen is a former NFL athlete and 2-year Division I captain turned emotional intelligence coach for world-class leaders. After almost becoming paralysed during a football injury in the National Football League, Keyen was able to start his new journey by looking at life from a completely new perspective. He dove headfirst into understanding what it actually means to live a life of fulfillment. We discussed a range of topics and give you a lot of insight into how his coaching techniques and insights can help you. And just a reminder that my first ever book, Move Your Mind, How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, launches on August 1st in retailers around Australia and September 1st overseas. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon Booktopia and through my Instagram bio link. And once again, thank you for joining us. Keyen, thanks, mate, for making time for a second chat with you. The first time you did a bit of a live coaching session on me. I'm interested to just hear what you've been up to and learn more about you. Looking back on the footage from last time, it's super interesting, everything you're doing. So, yeah, thank you for coming back. And how have you been?
Yeah, man, we had an incredible time that first time, and I'm excited to listen to it and hear it myself. I haven't heard it officially yet. But I'm excited to build on that and maybe give some context into what happened and how it happened. And I'm excited to dive more into that.
Yeah, great. Well, and it was a good experience for me to see the kind of work that you do, and I guess like to show people listening, how you go about that process. And I found it, a really great experience. So it's last time we did a bit, or I might just ask you again, just for the context of this episode as well, just to give, if you can do, a brief background on where you came from and sort of your past and how you got into this work, and then we'll go into the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I shared a little bit about my background, so I won't go too in depth. I'll more so just give a structure of how I got to be doing what I'm doing now. I had the opportunity to play professional football, and my modality of getting to that place was a lot different than the modality that I've taken now in my life. And that's really what I teach, the central premise of what I teach now. I used to operate in a place of force and pressure being my primary driving factors. I used to put myself into a corner just so I would perform and always wait for high pressure situations to be able to come out and perform. And I used those things to fuel me, and it led me to embodying this underdog mentality, embodying this I need to prove myself mentality, and causing me to have to work way harder than I should have, and my body ended up getting burnt out in the process. So since then, being a high achiever, being somebody that since I got into playing football has got to the top or been the best at whatever I've done, I've transitioned into a different operating system now with my coaching practice, which is teaching people that are high performers, that are people that achieve a lot and have a lot of success, have a lot of impact, on being able to do that with not operating from this place of stress and pressure and being pushed back against the wall to perform and be able to have more success, make more money, and have greater impact with exerting way less effort. And it's been cool to embody that in my own life and just to see how my life has substantially gotten better, and the relationship that I have with myself has gotten so much better too through that. So it's been this process of going from using pressure and stress to motivate me to ease and surrendering to motivate me. And I seem to get a lot further with this different operating system and not as burnt out either.
Yeah, which is one of the main things, not getting burnt out, because it's like, even if you can achieve at the highest level, what's the point if you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to enjoy the process? Or it might take you 20 years to get there, and then you're like, well, okay, great, I made all this money and achieved it. 20 years of my life is now gone. I didn't enjoy it. I'm unhealthy right now, and I'm going to have to spend the next 20 years undoing all the damage I've done to myself. So it's like, it's a lot of it's false economy, isn't it? And I think about this stuff so much, and it's been interesting actually. When I first spoke to you, I think it was maybe 6 weeks ago when I first got to New York, and I'm still here. And a lot of the people I've met here are, very money driven. I guess, New York, it's the financial capital. I've met so many financial type people. And you see this mentality where it's about just more and more money and more of everything. They're just needing to, be stimulated all the time. And I spent like an hour around these kind of guys, and I felt exhausted just like witnessing it. And I was like, far out, this is crazy to maintain, this kind of lifestyle that they're leading. So I'd rather just have no money and just chill. It's like, it's interesting. It's interesting, seeing it.
It absolutely is. And Nick, I love how you just you gave the two polar opposites of each other, right? It's like, I'd rather just chill and do nothing compared to operate in that state that they're in. And the beautiful part, I think, about what the work is that I do is I sort of bridge the gap between the two, where we're able to achieve at a very high level and even be driven by money, be driven by success, but not be operating in this place of you could feel that crazy tension and stress that they were holding on to. Underneath all of that drive that you're feeling and seeing from them. So being able to merge I just can want to chill and hang out, and being able to be true to our desires and what we really want, and bridging the gap and bringing them together, that's where the magic is at, my man.
Yeah, it's perfect. Exactly. And that's what you want. And I think that's such a good point, and I like the way you've put that there and what you're talking about, because I think in anything in life, it seems to be that across broader society, it's normally extremes. So it's either going all in that way, or just becoming like a bit of a hippie or whatever and doing nothing, or people find it hard to find that extreme. And you see it with what happens with social things or with different movements. It'll go from nothing being done about it to going so far the other way that it almost alienates people in a different way. So it's sort of such an important thing, and we need people like you talking about this on a broader level, because I think people need to understand this, because I think that's like the definition of success: being able to still work towards your dreams, but be comfortable in that process and not be sort of letting it, not letting it kill you.
That's it. That's the key right there, man. That's the key to life, I think. And you mentioned it earlier with some of the people with that just exit out and don't even try. And I think that's like a cop out to this human experience. And because I think people can attach to, okay, well, money doesn't matter. Okay, success doesn't matter. Okay, those things don't matter. So let me just not even pursue those because they don't matter. And I think people use that as an excuse to not have to confront some of their deeper rooted belief systems that they have surrounding themselves. So I don't know how this is really relevant, but I just think it's interesting how some people on the other end of the spectrum that get a lot of pride out of not chasing money, not chasing what lights their heart on fire and being seen at the highest level possible. I actually think it's just a cop out to not have to confront some deeper rooted belief systems.
For sure, it's a coping mechanism, isn't it? It's sort of, you see it everywhere. I've got friends in the acting industry that I've met that have sort of been doing it their whole life, and they haven't got to where they wanted. And instead of just being honest about where they're at and trying to find a solution, it's always about, nope, it's unfair, and it's this hard luck story, and that the world's against me, and the industry and the world's all messed up. And instead of just being like, well, this is reality, I want to do it. Be honest about where you're at. And I get, I guess it's you can't blame people for doing it because it's hard. But that's the thing, I guess you people will be saying, this what you did with me in that other session. But what would be some messages you would say to these kind of people? Because I think this is a thing that comes up so much, where people are just getting overwhelmed and they can't find that balance. They'll just give up on their dreams or give up on doing what they really want. What would be some simple messages you could say to them?
Well, the first one is I understand why. I understand why most people, I would say most people, take that route of jumping into more of that victim mentality. I understand it. Right? There's all these different operating systems and programmings, human programmings that are shoved in our face and makes it very difficult to be able to know this other way of being, because not a lot of people know about it. So because we're not exposed to a different way of doing things that we can wrap our minds around, we'll just always default to blaming everything else, because it's very difficult to acknowledge in our own issues when we don't see there being another operating system that we can move to. So I would say, because there's not a lot of awareness of this operating system and how this works and functions, I understand why so many people don't want to confront some of their deep-rooted stuff, because there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, okay, well, let's say I do say that I want to own where I'm currently at. Well, where do I go next? And that's where, somebody like me or somebody, a lot of other coaches, I think, that are out there that are able to do that. So I understand where people are at. As far as messages, I would say to them, I'd like, the biggest thing I could say is there is another way. There is another way. It can be very painful at times, but is definitely worth the process. And I don't work with a lot of people in that space. I work with more of the people that have an issue sitting down, not necessarily standing up. So more the people that have a harder time victimizing themselves at all and take a lot of accountability and a lot of responsibility, which is why they have a lot of success in the way that they do. So to be honest with you, I don't really talk to a lot of that demographic that is more of like the victims of having a hard time just like being motivated or driven to go,
Yeah. But no, I think there's some really good points there, and it's and I feel like a lot of the time as well, it's time pressure. We underestimate how long something's going to take, and then we put so much, we get overwhelmed because we're putting such a severe time pressure on when we need something achieved, rather than being realistic and giving ourselves enough, proper space and time to do it. And that just drives you, that's a recipe for disaster, I think, because you just, you can't keep things open-ended, but at the same time, you got to be realistic. And if you're trying to do things that just can't be achieved, at that point in time, you're going to get frustrated.
Certainly, and that brings up another point. I think this could be really valuable for a lot of people that might be listening, is I think what gets in the way of a lot of people being able to achieve what they want or get out of that rut is simply the judgment that they have of themselves for being in it in the first place. And that perpetual judgment of where they're at is what prevents them from being able to see what is in front of them. Because I truly believe that when we're able to get to a point where we're able to see more than 2 inches past our own faces, where we're out of survival mode, we're able to really receive what God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, is trying to give to us. I think it can be very obvious. And I think that the further we get away from survival mode, the more obvious it becomes of the steps that are in front of us to take. But when we go down that path of first not taking action during a time when we know that we should have, it can create this spiral effect. Yeah. And then it just leads to this downward sloping snowball effect of going down the rabbit hole of judgment for being in the place that they're in. And so to deflect that own personal judgment that they're feeling for themselves, they make it about the rest of the world. So really, that's what it is. It's this helpless feeling that they're experiencing because they don't want to continue to judge themselves, because they don't know what to do next, because they're so deep into the hole of indecision and not taking action that they don't know where else to go. So the only place to go is to not make it internal, but blame everything else. But it's really just the external expression of internal judgment they're feeling for themselves.
That makes a lot of sense, because when it's like a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Because when you're in that fight or flight or that survival mode where you feel like you can't get a break, you can barely make ends meet, and you just have no freedom. It's like your head's closing in and you don't have any capacity left to think about anything creatively, or like you said, you can't look further than that sort of gap in front of your face, and then so that blocks you. And the message you tell yourself, or I know when I experienced that, I was telling myself, okay, but I've just got to get this and this and this to happen, and then I can finally have the space once I get everything calm and I know that I've got security or whatever, then I can allow myself to think creatively about the bigger picture things. But from what I'm taking, what you're saying is which makes sense to me. When you're in that situation, training your mind to be able to, even when it is maybe a dire situation, being able to relax and trust that it's going to be okay, and allow yourself to open your mind up and look at what are some other ways of thinking, rather than waiting for, this future maybe opportune time to do it that may not even come.
Yeah, it won't. It won't. It just won't.
Yeah, there you
really,
go,
what really, like, what you're
come.
saying to what you're saying to the universe is you're saying basically it's like, I'm not worthy of feeling okay until this. And if that's the system that you're operating out of, you'll continue to have more and more and more thises. That it'll happen in perpetuity, and you'll just continue to chase the magic dragon. So that's where a lot of the difficulty can come in. Is you kind of got to be a little loony to be able to operate from this place of believing in something other than your current reality presents itself as. But that's the key to all of it, is being able to step into that place. Before I had money, I was stepping into a place of what it felt like to have money and the emotions associated with it. And as a byproduct, my vibration changed and shifted, and I was able to step in this place of actually attracting it. But if we can't step into that place of being a little fucking crazy with believing in something before it shows up, or giving ourselves permission to emotionally align with the thing that we want before it shows up, you'll just get down this rabbit hole of perpetually chasing the magic dragon, the one day idea that will never come.
Yeah, that won't come. And so what a lot of that's, I guess, self-sabotage and fear of why deep down that we're doing that, because we don't trust and believe in ourselves. And I guess by subconsciously, maybe, might not believe it, but by making excuses or saying that, no, it's because of blah, 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 or I'm not in a position where I'm, stable enough to try and do it. But really, at the end of the day, that's maybe an excuse, because if we did go and just go for, put ourselves in that position of really putting ourselves out there, then we're opening ourselves up to potentially failing at what we really want to do, and maybe that's to block that happening. Would that be sort of another component of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy and the cycle that never ends, right? But I would say this is like, the question becomes, well, how do you get to a point where you feel confident enough to be able to remove yourself from the chaos of the one-day principle? And the answer, in short, is when you're able to start to listen to yourself. And I want to say this, is that even if you do make a decision that is completely separate from all other opinions of all other people, and it is something that you do, and you fail, quote unquote, at it, you actually will gain a little more confidence through that experience. And now I know for many people that have never given themselves permission to listen to themselves for what they really want on really basic small things. That's where it starts. Like, well, what do I simply want to eat right now? Where do I want to go right now? What do I want to do? And it might not right away lead you to the most desirable outcomes, but as you give yourself permission to step out of potential judgment from other people, or making a decision from the frame of what you think other people might accept from you or approve you for, that's where confidence is from. So understand that the beginning part of building confidence, it's probably not going to work out great. And the best example I can give is like the little orphan. It's like there's this orphan heart that you have that hasn't been listened to probably in your whole life. And then what happens when people are like, well, okay, I'm going to listen to myself, and they're calling on that orphan to be confident. It's like, well, this orphan's been neglected. Yeah. It doesn't have a family. It doesn't have parents that love him. Like, how is the orphan supposed to be confident? It can't, right? So how does the orphan get confident? Saying, hey, all right, I see that you're not in a great place, but I'm going to show you some love, and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to give you a little bit of responsibility, right? And so that little responsibility is saying, okay, well, what do I want to do right now in this exact moment? If I didn't have to do anything, what would I do?
Yes.
That's the question. If I didn't have to do anything, what would I do right now in this moment? And maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's even getting on your phone and going on social media, right? But at least you're beginning to tell yourself that you matter because you're listening to yourself, okay? And expect in the beginning for there to probably be not desirable results, because like I said, what do you expect from an orphan? Right? You can't. So over time of listening to yourself, by just asking yourself those little questions of, okay, right now, if I didn't have to do anything, what would I do? And just simply doing that confidence internally begins to grow. And as that confidence begins to grow, you start making bigger and bigger and bigger decisions for yourself that will lead to bigger and bigger positive outcomes for yourself.
That makes complete sense. I'm loving all of this stuff you're saying, because I think it's I know I can personally relate to so much of it on the journey I've been on, and it's stuff that I see in my mental health work as well with so many people. They're struggling with these kind of things, and I think the biggest one, it was a question I was going to ask you that you sort of touched on there. I guess so much of this is from often projections from other people. Like, we can get ourselves to that place often where we are like, okay, I know I've got enough self-awareness to understand what I do want, and I know how to go about it, but I'm still not confident enough yet to be able to have such conviction like what you're talking about, because we've got our family, we've got friends, we've got the general public, we've got everyone telling us we're crazy for going down this path and telling us otherwise and giving us opinions. That's such a difficult thing to avoid. So I guess, like, from what you're saying, I guess is it really just conditioning yourself to the point of just being like, look, I'm going to be confident enough in myself and ground myself that that's okay. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, honestly, like, I would say the number one thing that you can do is you get the fuck out of wherever you're at and go by yourself somewhere. That's single-handedly it.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be terribly difficult to be able to make substantial changes in an environment that is keeping you in your past role that you've historically played, because you're going to be continually reminded by everybody around you who you really are. Right? So really, that's what I did. Was I got out of when I got done playing football. I was I'm from South Dakota. I realized I had to leave. I built enough money up to be able to at least support me for a few months, pack my car up, move to Miami. The complete opposite.
Yeah.
And at least being in a different space where I wasn't being constantly reminded who I am, that allowed me to be able to step into doing a bunch of shit that was opposite of who I believed that I was. And I think that's probably one of the most important seasons of life that many people skip on, because they go from a place of realizing that their old programming has ran them to a place of goal setting and deciding what they want. And I think there's a major gap in that process that many people don't account for, which I did. I would say I did it the right way, and that I continually give myself this permission to be in this place of not knowing what I want. And I know it's very difficult because society and our families and all these people can come down on us very hard on knowing what we want. But dude, when I went to Miami, I was a stripper for 3 months. Like, I just did a bunch of shit that, like, whatever I wanted to do. And I have so many fun, great experiences because I've been able to do that. And the cool part is, through me giving myself permission to not have it figured out and doing a bunch of things that just felt fun and inspiring to me, there's been some really, really strong paths that have emerged for me where it's not me trying to force myself to think positively about it, but I'm naturally embodying it because I gave myself permission to not have to know really what I wanted. And I think that's really the key to discovering our purpose or what we really want, is being able to let go of the need to have purpose and know what we want. And the cool part is, through that, different pieces of inspiration emerge, because we're able to listen to ourselves independent of the pressure we're putting ourselves to find our purpose or to find our path. Yeah. And then from there, when we're able to listen and just take some what I say is inspired actions, little things that just feel good to us, through that, greater levels of inspiration emerge, and then consistencies of inspiration emerge, which I suppose you could then call your purpose or your path. But it's not about trying to find it and pinpoint it. It's about letting go of the need to have it and following little pieces of information that eventually lead to larger pieces of inspiration, which you could then call your purpose if you want to attach a name to it. I don't even like to attach purpose to it because I'm still evolving and I'm still changing, and I might want to go do something different. Right, but I've also got myself to a place where I have enough confidence where I'm able to detach from a lot of those things. And a lot of people aren't in that place, which is why they do attach to purpose, which is why they do attach to religion, which is why they do attach to their goals, because they're not confident enough in and of themselves to be emotionally sovereign, where they don't need those things. They do need those things. And if that's where people are at, that's fine and that's great. But for me, the goal is to be able to detach from a lot of those things, allowing them to then show up in the greatest capacity. I felt more on purpose, I guess you could say on purpose, than I ever have. And it's not because I've been consciously trying to discover my purpose. It's because I let go of it.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing all of that. That does make sense. And I think there is so much emphasis on people searching and trying to, like you said, find that thing. And I think a similar thing for me, like I guess all my 20s, I just tried so many different things and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And originally it was all that obsession with wanting to be a professional athlete. So I was just searching and trying, and through that organically I found the path that, it led me to a path that I would never have imagined. So I think that's the thing. You can't really just pluck it out of thin air, and it's like trying to say, I want to find love at first sight. It's like, well, that's not love, that's lust. So if you want to find love, you got to meet someone, and then you got to spend time with them, and you got to nurture that relationship and go through ups and downs and hardships and grow together, and then that's going to be a meaningful and purposeful relationship. But you can't just find it. It's derived from the actual doing of things.
100%, man. And I love that your story is also an exemplification of that, of you just kind of following what's felt inspiring. I'm sure you've got some hell of a great series of stories for your life. That's what I think the beautiful part about life is falling in love with the ambiguity, falling in love with the things that we didn't expect were going to happen. And before you know it, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm at this place and I did all these crazy fun things that I didn't even imagine could happen. Because I can also say this is like all that shit about everybody talking about like finding your goal and reverse engineering your way into getting it. Like, what's the fun in knowing exactly how we're going to live our lives? Like, it might be safe, but for me, there's no fun in that. What's the fun in that? What's the point of living if it's all structured and it's all put out in front of us? Like I don't know. I love the ambiguity of life, and I love looking back and being like, wow, I could not have designed that if I tried, and that's way better than anything I could have ever came up with, right? So I'm like, wow, and that's why I'm so excited to continue with it.
No, it's exciting me listening to this because I'm exactly the same. And I was going through a period where I guess I was comparing myself to friends or people that have made a lot of money because they have done, like what you said, reverse engineered their way there, stuck at one thing, tried to just absolutely kill themselves to get there. And, now they are more financially set, but they don't seem that happy. But then I would get stressed about that. But then I started doing that, looking back and thinking, hang on, if I went down that path, I wouldn't have had all these crazy experiences and gone on, and when you're at the end of the day, like when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to look back and be like, oh, that was so cool when I remember when I did that huge business deal or made all that money or blah, 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 some commercial thing. You're going to look back on the experiences you had, what you felt, the people you impacted. You're not going to think about much else. So it's like, it's a good thing to remember. And it keeps life interesting because if you've open like that, you're going to have just such a crazy adventurous life, and who knows where it's going to take you.
Absolutely. And that's where even that too, man, it's like I want to be on my deathbed and thinking about incredible deals and all the money that I made and all of the connection and impact that I had. Right. And that's the beautiful part, I think, about and even it's interesting because even in the way that you're speaking, there's this differentiation between the two. That's like, okay, well, it's either I have all these crazy wild experiences and I don't really have a lot of financial success, or I have a lot of financial success and I don't really have a whole lot of deep rooted connections and I would say intimacy. But that's where it's like it's possible to have our cake and eat it. It's possible to be at that space of making and having all the money that we want, and also having all of the impact and intimacy as well, which is so exciting for me to talk about.
100%. No, I think and that, I think we're told a lot of the time that you can't have both. You got to, like, if you go down one path, it'll be like, oh well, grow up and go and you got to get a real job and go and get serious and do something that makes you miserable and conform or whatever. It's sort of people tell you that you can't find that middle ground of having both.
Yeah, absolutely. It's either you got to be like a Grant Cardone or you got to be a Mother Teresa. Like there's no in between, So like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and I'm not really cool with either one. So yeah,
yeah. So finding, I guess it's a lot of what you're talking about is just finding balance with so many different things, not having to look at the absolute extremes, just finding that balance and thinking outside the box in how you can make that work.
Yeah, balance is an interesting thing, man. Balance.
I'm so excited to be releasing my first ever book, Move Your Mind, How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life. The book teaches you how to create new daily habits to build happiness and reduce stress, and we deliver practical tools and lessons to help you make small but measurable daily changes to foster lasting improvements to your mental health. I share a lot of my own story. We interview a range of celebrities, personalities, wellness experts, and everyday people to share their stories. And it's broken into key holistic sections to give you tools to make actionable daily changes across all areas of well-being and take more control of your own life. It covers so many different areas. It's perfect for anyone who's tried to take ownership of their mental health but has lacked time, motivation, or information to effectively make a change. It's being published by Wiley, and you can pre-order through my Instagram bio on Amazon or Booktopia, and it will be available in major Australian retailers as of August 1st and overseas as of September 1st. And make a pre-order through my Instagram bio on Amazon or Booktopia and support us to get this message out there. I want to say thank you again for supporting us. It helps us to continue to grow this show and get our messages out there. I hope you enjoy. Mental health and well-being are real issues in the construction industry. Men in construction are twice as likely to take their own life compared to the ones who work in other industries, and that's just not good enough. With John Holland's help, we want to make a change. We've joined together to have honest conversations about mental health, life, and stories of people who have overcome challenges. When we hear about stories and struggles that sound a bit like ours, we can learn from each other and remember that we're not alone.
I think it's thrown around a lot, like finding balance. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does finding balance mean? Like having a good work-life balance, right? It becomes very much a mental game then, right? And I don't think this game is mental. Like I referred to earlier, I think a lot of it is feelings and getting in touch with our feelings, so we're able to understand what actually is inspiration for ourselves. And I think the balance can be confusing for people because it's people mentally trying to fix their life to fit this narrative of what they believe balance actually is. And which I think perpetuates unhappiness because it's still comparing themselves to what they think they should have, but the scale to determine if they've had it or not, or if they've got it, is not determined. There's no bar that says, okay, well, this is officially balance in my life, but they're shooting for it, right? And so I think balance can become something similar to purpose or goals in the fact that unhappiness is created because there's the pursuit of it and the thought that people need it to be happy. And that's where it's really interesting because I think a lot of it, the information age can be very good that we're in, but also can fuck a lot of people up because people that were once happy with the position that they're in now are unhappy because they're told that they don't have enough balance, or they're told that they need to have purpose, or they're told that they need to serve more people or whatever it is. And I think it's depending on whatever the thing is that you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself for. So if it is trying to maintain balance, or if it is trying to have purpose, simply by being able to let go of those things and allowing your deeper rooted sense of commitment to having it guide you, and trusting that you will have balance if you believe that you really desire that, and not trying to control it through our own mental means, but simply by stepping out of our own way after the intention's been set to have it, can lead as a byproduct to balance. But you don't get balance through consciously trying to get balance, right? You don't get your purpose through trying to consciously get your purpose, right? It all kind of follows suit in that same direction. So I think by whatever it is that we're using to justify why we're not happy, being able to get to a space, which is the hardest part, which is what I teach, to let go of the need or desire to have those things, then as a byproduct allows the universe to deliver it to you looking back in the most beautiful way possible that we could have never possibly thought of consciously ourselves.
I love that answer. And I've never heard balance talked about in that way, which it makes complete sense. You know, it's like the same thing, isn't it? It's interesting because I guess like our brain is wired to look at everything in that mathematical categorical way. It wants to understand things, it wants to control things, it wants to have answers. It doesn't like it if, you know, we can't look at it in that way, like what you're saying before with reverse engineering, you know, balance as well. Let's reverse engineer how we can find balance. Okay, if I can get to this position in my career, if I can have the perfect relationship, if I can have this living situation, if I can do blah blah blah, and then I guess it becomes a chore and it becomes this painful experience because you're putting so much conditions around it and it's exhausting. So it's like, it's sort of a lot easier in many ways, the way that you're saying, but then also it's a lot harder because we have to really, and you know, it's harder than it sounds. Like I've done a lot of this on myself that has worked and a lot that I'm still trying to undo of these severe, you know, thinking patterns. And you understand them, but still to undo them on a daily basis is so hard because like it's just programmed into us from such a young age. So it's again, I guess that's where your work comes in teaching people how to actually go about doing that.
Yeah, and what I say it's just unlearning, right? You said it, the programming that's been established and plugged into you, and then the years that you've been living in the self-fulfilling prophecy of the programming that you've had. So that's why, you know, as time goes on, we create an external reality that we already have inside of ourselves just to reaffirm all the beliefs that we already have about us. And as time goes on, those beliefs strengthen and it gets stronger and can get a little more difficult to unlearn. Not for me. With helping people, it's fucking easy for me, frankly. But it definitely can be difficult. But I also want to say this is that we substantially underestimate the power of our own unconscious mind, in that when we do get to a space where we are able to let go of having to figure it all out, that's when we can actually start to allow our brains to do what they're so good at, which is finding a solution without us trying to get in the way of being able to have the solution. So by letting go of it and setting a previous intention to have it, that actually allows our brains to do what they're supposed to do, which is find a solution to the problem. But it's kind of an oxymoron because it's not found. Our brains can't operate in the way they're supposed to when we're trying to consciously control it through our conscious mind, but actually through letting go of it, which is what allows our brains to then, I'm blanking on the scientific name of what the thing is in our brain that's responsible for that, but that's really where the secret sauce is, and that's where we can allow our brains to step into what they're created to do, which is solve problems, but we got to get out of our own way first. Yeah.
It's such a weird thing because it's sort of, I guess it's like when you're ruminating and you're sitting there and you've got your anxiety. You know, a lot of that is you're sitting there, you're worried about something that you can't control, that you don't have an answer to, but you sit there anyway and you just think and go on this tangent, even though deep down you know that thinking about it, well, logically, you know, thinking about it's not going to change anything, but we fall into that pattern. Whereas when you do just sit there and accept, you know what, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm gonna just get on with what I'm doing, and you know it'll come to me, and trust it'll come, and then you sort of find a way to solve that problem.
Yeah, in a perfect world, ideally, yeah. Which as time's gone on, I've been able to do that more and more, and it's so crazy how just like how many coincidences happen on a daily basis, right? Yeah. When I even like a barber, like I'm like, yeah, I'd like to get my hair cut. I don't want to go to that old place I was at. I want to bring in a barber. And then I forget about it. And then, 3 days later, I'm in an elevator with a guy who's coming to cut somebody's hair at the building that I live at. And I'm like, oh, you cut hair? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, great. And like things like that. I have multiple examples of that happen on a daily basis, right? But if I'm obsessing about how I can find the perfect place or research and get all the different hair barber shops, it just takes a lot of effort, and I'm not really in the game of effort anymore. I do a lot what is easy for me, and it serves me very well now. Yeah.
And I think it's that's the thing. So many people are taught, and through like motivational speakers or a lot of life coaches, they're taught, no, you've just got to grind it to whoever pushes harder. And, a lot of that advice is counterproductive. You hear a lot of people saying just sleep less, or I sleep for 4 hours a night. And actually, scientifically, we need to get about 7 to 8 hours of sleep to function well. So a lot of that, even that part of it is really important. But it's false economy, we're teaching us these things that in the moment sound good, and we see someone who we actually don't know the behind the scenes of how these people that are saying that they, did all these things together. We don't know exactly what they've actually done. But it sells because it's like, okay, if we can, it's again selling us a purpose. If you just do what I did and, go and push yourself into the ground and do more than anyone else, you'll become like me as well. And it's like, well, it's not going to work. It's like, well, it's a myth.
It's not. And here's the part that sucks about today's day and age too, is that it's gotten so easy for people to if you have money, you can self-promote yourself into a position of influence and power. All right.
Exactly.
So it's very easy to write a book. Anybody can write a fucking book now. Public speaking is like a profession now. Like, what the hell is that? I want to be a public speaker. For what?
Yeah.
What do you want to public speak about? What right? And they read
and
a
just
book
doing
and
it. No, and yeah, exactly.
Right,
doing it for the sake of doing it. It's like, and no, I was just going to say, yeah, I've seen so much of it through the mental health work. I've done a lot of speaking, and then I had so many people coming to me and saying, "Hey, Nick, can you teach me how to be a speaker? I think that's my new career path I want to go on." And I was like, well, what do you want to talk about? Like, I don't know, I just want to become a good speaker. I want to do that. It's like, but it's not, like, I didn't do that to make money. I, fell into it and spoke about it for free because I was like, well, I want to just share my story because I can see it's helping people. And organically that led to actually doing it somewhat as a career without meaning to, but it's setting out to do it for the wrong reason so much, isn't it? In so many different industries, people are doing that.
Well, everybody wants the power, but nobody wants to put in the time and energy to actually become. Everybody wants the power of being the king, but nobody wants to go and slay a bunch of dragons, right?
Yeah,
that's how it is. So that's cool. Like, there's a lot of people doing that. That's fine with me, but I understand how things work. I understand that foundationally, when you take care of home, everything else falls into place. And the art of becoming truly is something that many people need to learn how to do. And I would say delayed gratification in some ways can play a part in that if you come from that demographic of trying just to be promoted into that position without actually becoming. But yeah, it's I can see how so many people are confused because there's a lot of phonies that jumped into public speaking and they read a couple personal development books and now they're confusing the shit out of a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense, but I guess, like, at the end of the day, it's going back to reminding yourself, like, why if anything that you're doing is just for that sort of external reason, then even if you do actually achieve it, you're still not going to be happy. It's got to come down to, I want to do it for my own personal goal, even if it's a financial thing or whatever it is. It's got to be for me, not for other people. Otherwise, you're just not going to be. You're never going to be happy. You're going to be like living according to rules of what other people apparently want you to do, and people. And you see it with people that achieve fame and get addicted to fame. That can't be maintained forever. There's always going to be someone else coming along, and then when that does go down, then they lose their mind because then they're not in as big of a position of power and they can't get it back, and then they feel like they're not worth enough. So it's got to come down to fundamentally everything you're doing is for yourself, for your own personal reasons first.
Yeah, and really the acknowledgement of that too, man. Like, I think a lot of people hide behind this idea of they just want to like serve the world and they want to just help other people, but like, no, like you don't just want to help other people. Nobody just wants to help other people. You want to feel the feelings of what it feels like to help somebody else. Right? I want to feel the feel. Right? Yeah. I want to feel the feeling of what it feels like to help somebody else. And so for many, I know a lot of coaches tend to be very empathetic people. So if there's any coaches that are listening to this or people that are in a position where they are helping a lot of people, the most powerful thing that you can ever do as somebody that for a primary job is a service provider in some way is being able to get honest about your own personal desires and not lying, right? Not lying. And even if it is about the money, like I wouldn't be doing coaching as much as I do if I wasn't making the money that I'm making. I'm not a martyr. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely not a martyr. I would not be doing it if I was not making the money that I am, and if it was not providing me the lifestyle that I'm living and that I want to live. It checks so many boxes for me, but it's not because I just want to serve the world. It's not. Yeah. I'm actually really selfish in that way. And here's the cool part is because I give myself to be extremely selfish and to be honest about my intentions, it's actually allowed me to serve people at a much greater capacity, which is kind of fascinating.
Oh, totally. I think it's an important thing. And, I went through that same process with what I'm doing, which I think originally when I was doing it, I was telling myself that story that, oh no, I'm doing this because I just care so much and I just want to, I want to feel special that I'm, doing something more noble than anyone else. And then I realized, well, you know what? I do actually care about this and I'm doing it for the right reasons. But at the same time, I'm ambitious and I want to make money and have success. And I'm going to find a way to combine both. And as you said, that leads to helping more people anyway. And I remember I was listening to, I think it was David Letterman was interviewing George Clooney, and I really liked what they said. They were talking about like charities they're involved in, and Clooney was quite honest, and he said to Letterman, he's like, look, I care about these charities, but if I'm honest with you, why are we doing it? We're doing it, number one, because it makes us feel good. And then, David Letterman said the same thing. He's like, yeah, look, that's the truth. I'm doing it. Number one, we're all, everyone puts themselves first and we're all inherently selfish. It's how we're programmed, and we're doing it because it makes us feel good. But you know what? What's wrong with that? If doing something that makes you feel good is going to help even one other person, that's good. And that's what I say in a lot of my work. I'm like, go and be selfish. Go and if being selfish is what it's going to take to motivate you to do something that might change someone's life or help them, go and be incredibly selfish. I think it's a great message.
It's actually required. And this is the part that kind of sucks, is that I'm really glad George Clooney said that. It's so cool that he did, because there's too many really rich people out there that are now in this like really chill, like humble season of life, and they're giving this message off to just go serve people. Just go serve. And it's like, I'm like, go fuck yourself, dude. Like, you're fucking people over by telling people to do that, when in reality, you are selfish as fuck. You are. And I want to say this, like you reverted to earlier. Yeah. You reverted to earlier, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, it's required to have a certain level of earthly success. You have to learn to be able to establish that level of confidence in yourself to be able to do that. But, people are listening to these really high-end people making a lot of money, having a lot of success, talk about just like being humble and putting your head down and working hard and not giving the real, raw, honest truth, which is the reason why they got to where they are is because they're super, super confident in themselves. And they're able to put themselves first at a very high capacity.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't get there by some, magic formula. They went and backed themselves, and they put themselves out there, and exactly. So it's sort of, it sends the wrong message, and it's an important point you're making, because rightly or wrongly, these big celebrities, that's who people listen to. They can influence people in a good or a bad way, but if they're going to open their mouth and say something, it's going to have some sort of impact. So it's actually, I think it's a responsibility that they should be using that to try and put good messages out there and say the right things, because you're going to influence people one way or the other. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go, mate. You go.
No, I was going to say, I don't even really think it's a responsibility on their part, because they're just being humans. They're just expressing their truth in that moment. And now, okay, maybe they are disconnected from how they felt during the beginning parts of their success. But I think it's a responsibility of all the people listening to learn to be more mature in our thinking pattern of when we're listening to other people. I think humans are just being humans in that way of just they're interviewed, they're asked to come on these talk shows, like, it takes a lot of self-awareness to operate the place that I'm talking about. And that's not a place most people are going to be willing to go. So I think it's more on the people that are taking in and consuming information to be able to do research for themselves in some way on backgrounds of people and really seeing the come up that people had, not just what they're currently talking about and taking it as face value. So we don't have to get too deep into that. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
No, thank you. I like that. I think that's really good, and that makes sense. And that's more sustainable for everyone, because if you're trying to ask other people to put out the right messages all the time, then we can't control that, but we can hopefully all start to try and be more aware of things and take control ourselves. So I think it's a really good point, and it's relevant. I think that's relevant to so many areas of life. So it's great. And look, I think we've covered so many interesting things here. I think this combined with the other session, it's can't wait to share this with our listeners. We finish every interview. We've got 5 questions. These can be sort of quick answers or whatever comes to mind. But I'll just finish it with this, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
Let's do it.
Last thing as well, I'll put this in the show notes. Where can people find you? Where's best for them to go if they want to learn more about you?
My website, KeyenLage.com, and my Instagram, Keyen.Lage, are the 2 places.
Easy, and they'll be in the show notes as well. So anyone listening, just go to the links in the notes, and you can find the website and other links. So first question, what is your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
My best childhood memory that comes to mind. I think just spending most of my days outside catching snakes, running around, going to the creek. I know people say it in different languages, but it's like a small body of water where different reptiles and animals live. Catching frogs, catching toads, playing with bugs, catching crawdads, crawfish, and just living my youth in doing those things, man. I've just had so much fun exploring and doing fun stuff like that. So I would say that.
Yeah, just being out and just exploring as a kid. What do you think is the biggest burden on mental health in society today?
The message that goes along suit, I think, with what we talked about today, with the message that we're not already what we want to be. And I think that's the best message that anybody can teach, is that you already are everything that you want. And now it's much more difficult to fully embody that, but what's perpetuating unhappiness is the comparison that people are making to everybody else, with purpose, with balance, with the need to have tons of money, even though their lifestyle they really want doesn't mean they have to be a millionaire. All the levels of comparison. So I would say that probably. Yeah.
I completely agree on that. I think it's the comparison is a killer. It's so bad. Where do you see mental health in 10 years' time? Do you see things improving?
Wow, what a great question. Where do I see mental health in 10 years? I think the polls will continue to widen. I think there'll be almost like a cultish depth in the personal development space, and that I think there'll be another side which is focusing entirely on emotions and not focusing on goals. And that's what I call it emotional sovereignty. I'm coining that, and I've never heard anybody else say it. But I think that's the future. What I teach is really just getting into touch with our own deeper sense of knowing and our own emotions, so they don't control us, and we're able to actually have a healthy relationship with them. Because whether we like it or not, no matter how logical or pragmatic people think that they are, all of our emotions still drive our decision-making process. So it'll all be emotionally centered and not as much mental in regard to like goal setting and reverse engineering and mental, read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, and it's going to become much more simple. So I think there'll be that demographic still to get really strong, but there's going to be also this different wave, which is the emotional sovereignty that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's great. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Follow my heart. I've consistently lived the life of following my heart. And in a world where people are so deathly afraid to do so, I think the most courageous thing that we can do is to do that. And there's a reason why people don't do it. Because it's a lot easier to open a business or start a business that is something that's detached from us and to have a lot of success with it, which is not bad. I don't want to say it's bad. But to actually commit to something of the heart reveals all of our deep-rooted insecurities. And in order to really step out and do what our heart desires at the highest capacity, takes a lot of mending of our own relationship with our hearts. And I've been able to do that, and I continue to do that. And I'm a flagship for anybody that is afraid to. And I can say, hey, I've been able to do it, and it hasn't always been easy, but I've been able to have a lot of success, make a lot of money, and be very connected intimately to people around me at a high capacity. So there is hope. I would say following my heart definitely is the most courageous thing. I continually do.
I love that one. Yeah. Same way I've tried to live my life, and it's been, incredibly hard and confronting, and still is. But at the same time, you wouldn't change it for anything, because, what's more meaningful? What's going to make you feel more connected than try? I think once you live like that, you almost can't go back. If you've followed that, you can't go back.
My tolerance is zero now. Like my if I start to feel something being out, I'm like, no, sorry, I'm out, back. Right, absolutely.
You become incredibly self-aware and in tune with everything. Yeah. So final one, what is your personal definition of happiness?
This kind of follows suit with the theme of this whole interview. Letting go of the need to have it.
Yeah.
When you don't need happiness to be happy, then you can start to be happy.
I love that to finish on. How powerful is that? If you don't need to be happy, then you've got permission to actually enjoy right now. We're allowed to just feel okay right now rather than waiting for something. I think it's a really powerful, and I think it does sum up this conversation so well. So thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. I always know when these will help other people, because I've just been hanging on everything you've said, and it's made me, it's really made me think about a lot of stuff. So I think it's great what you're doing. Anyone listening to this, make sure you check out all of the links in the episode, and thank you again for doing it, mate.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it.
This episode of Move Your Mind was produced and edited by Tim Boozer.
Thanks to Keyen Lage for joining me today for the Move Your Mind.